The luxurious first-class cabin fell into a momentary hush as the flight attendant abruptly stepped into Sophia's path. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a mistake. This section is reserved for first-class passengers only." Her words were smooth, but her eyes were razor-sharp. Around them, heads turned with silent curiosity. A few expressions hardened. Others simply dismissed her. To them, she didn't look the part. Sofia Mendez felt the air thicken. Her fingers instinctively adjusted the elegant watch on her wrist, a gift from her husband, Eduardo. A quiet, precious reminder of the day their lives had first entwined. At 35, she wore grace like second skin. Her simple cream-colored dress, subtle heels, and a vintage leather tote contrasted starkly with the branded couture and sparkling accessories around her. The first-class cabin of Stellar Airways was the very image of opulence. Wide leather recliners, ambient lighting, champagne bubbling in fluted crystal, and attendants gliding across the aisle with military elegance. Eduardo had insisted she travel alone this time, calling it a reward. "You've earned it," he'd said, brushing a kiss to her forehead after the charity gala she had spent months organizing. "Enjoy the luxury. I'll meet you at the resort tonight." So here she was, alone for once, allowing herself a sliver of extravagance. But even that, apparently, needed justifying. Sofia held out her ticket. "I have a first-class reservation." Camila Reynolds, the head flight attendant, took it as though it might stain her manicured hands. Her crisp navy uniform, golden name tag, and sleek blonde bun projected authority. But there was no kindness in her posture. She studied the boarding pass like it was counterfeit. "There seems to be some kind of system error," she said with a skeptical arch of her brow. "You might have been assigned here by mistake." A man in a gray suit looked over his newspaper. His Rolex caught the light as he scoffed. "Happens all the time. Economy's getting bolder these days." A few chuckled behind their seats. Others just stared. A young woman in Dior leaned over to whisper to her partner, both glancing at Sofia like she was an intruder at a royal banquet. Camila's voice dripped faux sympathy. "Let me check if we can find you a more comfortable spot in the back of the plane." Comfortable. The word dangled like bait, daring Sofia to react. She didn't flinch. "Please verify it again." "My husband specifically booked this seat." More eyes turned toward her now. Her calm voice, her poise, it only irritated some. A woman wearing a necklace big enough to purchase a small island chuckled into her champagne. "Everyone says something like that when they want an upgrade." "What's next? Is he the CEO?" The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was cruel. Camila signaled to a junior attendant. Their silent exchange spoke volumes. Sofia touched her watch again. That moment, that memory, it reminded her who she was before all this. She had been a flight attendant once, too. She knew this world, this hierarchy, these hidden glances. Back then, her uniform had earned her respect. Now, her simplicity made her suspect. A man nearby tapped his leather armrest impatiently. "Can we move this along? Some of us have real appointments." Camila straightened with practiced grace. "Ma'am, I'll need to ask you to wait near the boarding gate while we clarify this misunderstanding." Sofia inhaled slowly, her spine still tall, voice still soft. "My ticket is valid. I have every right to be here." That should have been enough. But Camila's lips curled with condescension. "For security reasons, we can't allow just anyone into first class without proper verification. Just anyone." The words clung in the air, thick and ugly. Before Sofia could reply, a shadow fell across the cabin. The hiss of the aircraft door opening brought a sharp pause to the murmurs. Eduardo Vasquez stepped inside. Every head turned, every breath caught. Standing over 6 feet tall in a navy Tom Ford suit, He looked like he'd stepped straight out of a Forbes cover shoot. Broad shoulders, relaxed yet commanding posture, and a presence that seemed to rearrange the molecules in the room. Silver at his temples, a clean jawline, and the calm focus of a man who moved mountains in meetings no one else was invited to. He scanned the room. His eyes found Sophia, and they softened. To the rest of the cabin, he was a mystery. But to her, he was everything. And within seconds, the entire balance of power in that room was about to shift. The cabin fell into a breathless silence. Conversations halted. Champagne glasses hovered midair, and even the low hum of the engines seemed to retreat as Eduardo Vasquez stepped forward. His steel-blue eyes swept the space with precise calculation, taking in every detail like a man trained to read the battlefield. When they landed on Sophia, standing poised yet surrounded, questioned, something shifted in his expression, subtle but chilling to those who knew him. A slight tightening near the corners of his eyes. It was the first warning sign, the calm before the storm. Sophia, his voice, deep, smooth, unhurried, carried like thunder cloaked in velvet. Is there a problem? Camilla and the manager visibly stiffened. The confidence they'd wielded just moments ago collapsed under the sudden pressure of reality. Sir, we were just clearing up a minor seating confusion, the manager stammered, his tone now drenched in apology, his spine already bowing to the weight of Eduardo's presence. Eduardo advanced down the aisle, not with haste, but with a measured dominance that swallowed the space around him. The cabin seemed to shrink. Passengers leaned away, shoulders drawn tight, uncertain whether to watch or look away. But that's my wife's seat, is it not? 2A? He asked, voice like silk wrapped around steel. There was a faint trace of his Spanish accent in the vowels, enough to make it melodic, but never soft. Your wife? Camilla repeated, her voice barely a whisper now, her complexion draining to porcelain. Around them, the ripple effect was instant. Gasps, whispered names. Someone fumbled their phone into their lap. Eduardo stopped beside Sophia, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The gesture, intimate, protective, unmistakable, told the entire cabin who she was to him. His watch gleamed in the overhead light, understated but unmistakably priceless. Yes, Sofia Mendez Vasquez, my wife. He paused. Has there been a problem with her accommodation? Though his voice remained measured, every syllable vibrated with quiet command. The manager paled, his rehearsed authority slipping fast. Mr. Vasquez, we didn't realize. We were simply following verification protocol. Eduardo's gaze cut into him, then moved deliberately to Camilla. Verification of what, exactly? Her boarding pass? Or whether she fits your idea of a first-class passenger? The silence was now absolute. Even the rustle of designer sleeves or the clicking of laptop keys ceased. The entire cabin froze under the weight of that question. I wasn't aware, Camilla began, the words tripping over themselves, her breath short, hands trembling slightly as she fumbled with the edge of her blazer. I see, Eduardo said simply, though his tone made the temperature drop by degrees. The word cut with clinical precision. He surveyed the room with slow calculation. Every twitch, every glance was noted. Sophia's shoulders still held a trace of tension, despite her composure. Across the aisle, the man with the newspaper now stared fixedly at his polished shoes. The woman with the diamonds was nearly burrowing into the in-flight magazine. And the staff, those once so certain, now stood with spines bent and smiles forced. Eduardo's voice returned, calm, but weighted like stone. Before she was my wife, Sophia was the youngest head flight attendant in Stellar Airways history. His eyes flicked toward Camilla. She understands protocol, service, discipline, possibly more than anyone else in this cabin. A ripple of movement, shifting limbs, darting eyes. The first signs of guilt masquerading as discomfort. Eduardo's hand never left Sophia's back. She once identified a passenger suffering a silent embolism. Before even the man realized it, she saved his life. The airline honored her for it. The plaque still hangs in the main terminal. Has anyone here seen it? The question lingered unanswered. Camilla's expression cracked, her mascara subtly smudging at the corners as perspiration traced her temple. The manager now clutched his cap like a shield, lips parted, but too afraid to speak. "I had the flight held briefly," Eduardo said after a beat. "I wanted to surprise my wife." He paused. "It seems," he added with soft emphasis, "I arrived at the perfect moment." Passengers who hadn't recognized him before were now murmuring his name. Others were quietly texting updates to the outside world. The man himself, however, remained rooted, stoic, and unshakable. His eyes shifted back to the manager. "As the majority shareholder of Stellar Airways," Eduardo said, voice still even, "I'm deeply disappointed in what I've just witnessed." The words majority shareholder detonated silently, but visibly. A passenger audibly gasped. Someone else dropped their phone. Camilla swayed slightly, reaching for the back of a nearby seat to steady herself. "Mr. Vasquez," the manager began, tone fragile, voice cracking under pressure. "Please believe this was an isolated mistake." Eduardo raised one hand. The man fell silent as though commanded by law. "Misunderstandings," Eduardo said, tilting his head slightly, "have consequences." His tone didn't rise, didn't threaten. But somehow, it made the blood drain from every face in the room. Eduardo reached into the inner pocket of his tailored blazer and pulled out his phone. His fingers moved with precise intent, each tap a quiet declaration of authority. "I've just emailed the board," he said, not looking up. "Effective immediately, all Stellar Airways employees will undergo mandatory anti-discrimination training." Then his gaze lifted, ice calm and unyielding, and locked directly onto Camilla. "Miss Reynolds," he said, his tone utterly neutral, "you'll have the honor of being the first participant." Camilla's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her thoughts scattered, her career flashing like snapshots behind her eyes. The graduation ceremony, where she earned her wings, the promotions, the accolades, all now trembling on a precipice. The silver flight pin on her chest, once a badge of pride, now weighed heavier than steel. Eduardo shifted his attention to the manager. "As for the Director of Customer Experience role we discussed last quarter," his voice softened, now layered with something deeper, something personal. "I believe my wife, given her history with the company and her first-hand knowledge as a passenger today, would be more than qualified for the position, if she wants it." Sophia blinked. The announcement caught her off guard, her composed exterior flickering for just a second before she steadied herself again. But Eduardo saw the shift. He always did. Then, turning to the cabin, Eduardo raised his voice. Not loud, but projected with practiced precision, reaching every corner of the aircraft. "Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for the earlier delay. As a small courtesy, champagne will be complimentary for the remainder of the flight." A murmur of surprised approval swept through the passengers. But Eduardo wasn't finished. He lowered his voice again, just enough for those seated nearby, and for Camilla especially. "And please," he said, "make sure my wife receives the level of care and respect she deserves for the rest of this journey. Your future with the company may depend on it." Camilla gave a stiff, mortified nod, lips pressed into a colorless line. Her posture folded inward, the imperious command she had once carried dissolved completely. With a quiet, broken gesture, she motioned to the other attendants to begin service. No one missed what had happened, and no one would forget it. The suited executives who'd once looked through Sophia now regarded her with a quiet, almost reverent respect. Conversations turned inward. Phones were tucked away. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was contemplative. The power balance had shifted. The ocean shimmered beneath a golden sky as the sun began its descent. From the balcony of their private beachfront suite, the world looked peaceful again, serene, eternal. A soft breeze rustled the edge of Sophia's dress as she sat beside Eduardo, a glass of deep red wine in her hand. "That was quite the entrance," she said with a half smile, her eyes tracing the horizon. Eduardo chuckled, lifting his own glass. "Not the reunion I envisioned, I'll admit." He reached over and laced his fingers with hers. "But I have to confess, it was satisfying to watch the facade crumble." Sophia laughed gently, her shoulders finally relaxed. "For years I avoided using your name, your status," she said, more to the sea than to him. "I wanted to prove I could stand on my own, not as Mrs. Vasquez, but as Sophia Mendez." "And you did," Eduardo replied without hesitation. "That charity gala you organized raised more funds in one night than the foundation had seen in 5 years. You've never needed my name, Sophia. You built your own legacy." She looked down at the elegant watch on her wrist, the one he'd given her early in their relationship. Her thumb brushed the edge of the faceplate with quiet nostalgia. "I still miss it sometimes," she admitted. "The independence, the sense of purpose my career gave me." Eduardo studied her, his expression softening. "That's why I created the Director of Customer Experience role. It's not a gift. It's a platform, a chance to lead change where it's needed most." Sophia blinked. "You planned that before what happened on the plane?" He smiled. "It was going to be your anniversary gift. But after today, it feels even more fitting. You've always had the vision. Now you also have the platform." She felt the swell of emotion rising unexpectedly in her chest. Gratitude, love, purpose, all converging into something brighter. "You never stopped believing in me," she whispered. "I never could," Eduardo said, reaching out to gently tap the watch on her wrist. "You remember what I said when I gave you this?" Sophia nodded, her voice quiet. "That time is the only luxury that truly matters, how we use it. And with whom." He turned to her fully, eyes unwavering. "I didn't fall in love with Mrs. Vasquez. I fell in love with Sophia Mendez, the woman who knew who she was before the world did." Sophia squeezed his hand, her smile radiant in the fading light. "So," Eduardo asked, his voice a little softer now, "what does the future Director of Customer Experience think about changing the skies?" Sophia looked out at the endless ocean, the future suddenly wide open and filled with possibility. "I think," she said with quiet conviction, "it's time to fly a little higher."